Hey, Margie here. This is the last podcast episode of 2020. And I think a lot of you can agree this has been a challenging year. But with all challenges come lessons learned. And so today we're focusing on resilience, which by definition is the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties. And what lessons of resilience have we learned from this pandemic and this year? Well, I have two special guests who are joining me today. The first is Dr. Mark Pochapin, who's the Chief of Gastroenterology at NYU. And Mark did an amazing podcast episode, actually episode 20 on hope. And he was in the front lines during the pandemic. So I think he has a lot of great information to share. He's also my brother, and I love having him on the podcast. And then the second guest is also a family member today, and that's my husband, Craig, who's an OBGYN, and he was dealing with pregnant women throughout this pandemic, and he also has some really great information to share. So stay tuned. Welcome, Mark. I am just absolutely thrilled to have you here, and this is the last episode of 2020. So I thought you were the perfect guest to start it off. So welcome.
Thank you. You know, Margie, it's amazing because when you think about this year and all we've been through, it's really wonderful to end the year with the podcast with you, because so much of what we missed is our ability to recognize the people who are important in our lives. And having a sister like yourself, having a family who's so caring all along through, I think we're all getting just a greater appreciation for that. So whatever this can bring to others, the hope is that they'll recognize that we take so much for granted, but we have so much in our lives that we should be grateful for.
What a great way to start it out. And I feel the same way about you. I'm always so grateful. As we've always been, we've always gotten along, even when we were little. So what I want you to share, you lived through the thick of it in New York City at a major New York hospital, and you were caring for COVID patients. I mean, when we didn't even know if we had enough PPE, we didn't even know if we had the equipment. We didn't even know what we were doing with the illness. I mean, there was so much unknown and there was so much fear, but what worked? We're talking about resilience today, and what got you through it? Would you like to share some things that really were helpful?
I think the most important thing was that we were in a unique position as physicians, as healthcare providers, to be able to actually do something about this. And even though we didn't know much, we could make a difference. And in many ways, we were the soldiers on the front line of this war against this virus, that instead of looking at it as an obligation, I felt it was more an opportunity. It was not, I had to, but I get to. And this has been a new philosophy I've been trying to take up through this time, not looking at what we have to do, but what we get to do. And I was given the opportunity. I got to fight this thing on the front line and try and really get in the trenches with people in such dire need to help them. And even with the little knowledge we had, we knew how to care for patients. We knew that we needed to make sure that they got plenty of oxygen, that they could breathe. And I had faith in the system. I knew the science, the brilliance of the people who were doing research. I saw the trials. I heard about the enthusiasm. I heard about how they're going to take this novel way of creating a vaccine with mRNA and what they were creating for SARS and MERS to utilize now for COVID-19. I heard all about that early in March and thinking that I know that science will prevail. I know we'll beat this thing. So let me be a part of it. And to me, the opportunity to join with my colleagues and to see everybody from all components, nurses coming from different states, doctors who are dermatologists and ophthalmologists, all wanting to come shoulder to shoulder to fight this thing was inspiring. And also recognizing that resiliency is pretty strong. People are way more resilient than they think they are, both on the patient side and I think on the healthcare side.
I think it was so beautiful how everybody did their part. Mm-hmm. It was just amazing what people, still, it's not that this is over, but people are doing their part. And here you are, a GI. You didn't know anything, but you were thrown in, right? You didn't know how to deal with this. Everybody was sort of thrown in and did what had to be done.
And the truth is, it came down a lot to leadership as well. So we mapped out exactly what knowledge we needed, what tools we needed, what type of supervision. So we had a system set up for people who weren't used to taking care of patients in the medical realm, had great supervision of people who did. So there was the ability for us all to recognize our strength, but also how we could work together to maximize the ability to care for patients. Egos were put aside, Margie. There were chiefs of departments who were being supervised by senior fellows. It was unbelievable how all of the usual hierarchy got just thrown away. And the hierarchy was just who had the best ability to care for the patients. And it was really something spectacular. In fact, at the end of the surge, so as we started seeing the patients come down, we sent a note, a letter, beautiful letter, to everyone who served in what we called the COVID Army. And we gave them a pin that says COVID Army, COVID-19. And it's something that everybody was very proud to really recognize they're a part of and that they could make a difference in people's lives.
And the thing was, everybody made a difference, regardless of what part they played.
That's the big thing. Again, just in the same way the hierarchy got thrown away, in many ways, the hierarchy of training got thrown away because the housekeeping staff were as important as the physicians in keeping people safe. They were keeping everything disinfected. They were sterilizing. They were critically important, and they were putting themselves equally as risk, if not more, than all the doctors and nurses. So in many ways, everybody got equalized in the battle as well. The unfortunate thing is, that COVID-19 also brought in so many of the disparities that we see in healthcare. It really put a spotlight on that. So we have to just do so much more to try and eliminate disparities so that everybody gets the same appropriate care. But in the battle against it, everybody was part of this and together really made such a difference, really got through it. There was a time I remember where we were concerned, will we have enough beds? Will we have to make decisions on whether someone needs a ventilator or not? That was my biggest fear, that I wasn't going to be able to give someone the care they needed because there wasn't the resources. And we're going to have to make a decision. In fact, our ethicists were even coming up with what the guidelines would be. But fortunately, we never needed to get there. I think everybody got together. We figured out how to find enough beds. We figured out how to get together and get the care that people needed. We got through the surge. Now, unfortunately, in the rest of the country right now, as you know, they're going through some of these same decisions, particularly in the West Coast, and my heart breaks for them. But at least what we've gone through, we're able to help our colleagues come up with some algorithms on how to maximize the ability to care for the sickest patients.
Wow. But that's so interesting that the hierarchy gets thrown away when you have something bigger than your normal life to deal with. And I think that's something.
And actually, it's happening again with vaccination, because right now, we're getting vaccinated along with anybody who's on the front line. So first you get the emergency room and the ICU, and it's not just the doctors and nurses again, it's anybody who's having exposure to the patient. So again, it's really looking at the bigger picture of how everyone plays a role, everyone. And even these unsung heroes, as I call them, these are the people, the security guards, the housekeepers, the transports, the people serving the food, they all put themselves at risk the same way every other healthcare provider did.
Yeah, and I think something that this pandemic did, it shined a light. And I think every person has a value and every person is special. And if we look at each person, what are they bringing to the table? What is their special, unique qualities? I think the world would just be a much happier place. And I think it's a different way to view things, viewing people through the lens of what are they, of what's good about them. And I think that it sort of showed us. For me, when I would go to Whole Foods, I was so grateful and so thankful for these people. And not that I don't always appreciate people working, but it was a whole new level of appreciation. And I think that's one of the things we can take away from the pandemic moving forward.
I couldn't agree more. In fact, you usually think of resiliency as getting tougher, getting stronger. And yes, we did get tougher and stronger, but I also think it was about being kinder. I actually think kindness played a huge role in this pandemic. Now, I'm just talking about wearing a mask. When you wear a mask, in fact, here it is. This is the mask I've been wearing. Can you read it?
I respect you. I love that. That's
right.
Great.
Because when I wear a mask, it says, I respect you. And when you wear a mask, you say, I respect you as well. And I think kindness is something that was really critically important. Kindness to people who had the disease, kindness to each other, recognizing that we take so much for granted in just being able to be together, being able to give someone a hug, being able to socialize, and the ability to offer some kindness to someone who might be frightened. There's so much fear. Kindness to someone who's sick, kindness to someone who lost someone. But I think kindness was part of the resiliency in terms of its gratitude, in addition to us getting tougher. I think, it's really true that if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger and it makes you better.
I believe that. I think our biggest growth opportunities are through our challenges. And so I think that's one of the things that we can all use, lessons that we've learned from this year, because it has not been an easy year and there have been so many challenges. But if we can use those to move forward to 2021, I agree with you. I think the world is going to be a much kinder place. It's not going to be so me focused because we've had to expand. And I think it's
really true. I think this pandemic really showed us that everyone's vulnerable and that it's a global pandemic. We can't just isolate ourselves in our city, in our state, in our country. Everyone is affected by this. And actually together, working together is the way that we can get through it, both through keeping each other safe, but also through the incredible science and innovation and research. Look, I got vaccinated, Margie, just recently, and I just can't believe it's a miracle of modern medicine that we could create a vaccine in less than a year. It's unbelievable.
With everybody working together. It really is.
It really was.
Something that's really important to me, and I just believe in appreciation and gratitude, as I know you do. But how did it feel? Let's just hear from your perspective. Oh my goodness. Tell us what happened at 7:00 at night in New York City. How did that make you feel?
It's hard to
tell everyone, because everybody's from all over who are listening to the podcast.
So at 7 p.m., this city, New York City, which is where I'm at, came alive with noise and shouting and screaming and music and people hitting pots and pans. There was so much energy and enthusiasm and gratitude pouring through every window that no matter where you were in the city, you heard it. And it was like you were a championship sports team that just won the greatest prize. It was a feeling of gratitude that was unparalleled, and it energized you. And, Shari, my wife, is a doctor as well. And the two of us would just listen to that, and it would help us get through the next day. It was something that was really meaningful, and I'll never forget it. It was a way of others who really felt helpless, but could do something by cheering on and encouraging all the healthcare professionals and people going in trying to make a difference.
And I think taking things from 2020 to 2021, knowing how great that made you feel, you want to pay it forward and you want to thank people, and you want to really, when someone does something, that appreciation means so much, because that's what people want. There's nothing better than being appreciated for what you do. And I think so often we get busy in our lives and maybe we say thank you, but we don't stop and take breaks for appreciation and tell all those people thank you for what they've done.
You are so right about that. And I'll tell you an interesting story. When 9/11 hit, look, New York City is no stranger to crisis and tragedy. When 9/11 hit, I remember standing on the side and just cheering all of the police and firefighters and everyone who, again, were putting themselves forward to help others, potentially at their own risk, who knew what was happening in the city at that time. And I remember being so grateful for them. And one day I was coming back later from the hospital, and it was 7:00. I did not realize all of a sudden I hear all the noise. And I was right in front of the United Nations, which I walked by getting from the hospital to my apartment. And all of a sudden I hear a siren, a very loud siren. And I turn around a little frightened. And then I hear over the loudspeaker, "Thank you, doctor, for your service." And it was the police over their loudspeaker were thanking me at 7 p.m. in the same way that on 9/11, I thanked them. And it just shows, again, how important. And it just brought tears to my eyes to think that we all do a part. We all do such an important part. Everybody is important. And whatever that part is, if they take it to heart, if they say, I'm going to make a difference, even if it's just wearing a mask, then we could all get through this in a way that we can feel like we played a role. And the helplessness, the fear, the lack of communication creates an anxiety that's unbearable. But if we could talk about it, and if we could look forward and say we're going to get through this, which we are going to get through. We have a vaccine. The end is in sight. I think we can at least comfort each other knowing that ultimately this will be behind us. And that's where the next year, 2021, is going to be a good year. Do you remember Tommy, Margie? The show Tommy?
Oh, yes, of course.
I think 21 is going to be a good year. Remember that's when they start?
That's so funny. We should play that music. Yeah,
exactly.
That would be a good theme song. That's
yeah,
really
go ahead.
funny.
You can do it on your podcast.
Oh, is there anything else that you want to share for people listening in terms of resilience and in terms of anything else you want to share? This has been so great because I think the lessons that you've been through are something that we can all learn from and grow from.
I think that people are more resilient than they think. And you have to give yourself and others a little more credit, be a little more kind to yourself. We talk about kindness to each other. We are our worst enemies. It's okay to be fearful. It's okay to have anxiety. The key is to recognize it and address it. In fact, the strength is addressing the fact that we're vulnerable. Our vulnerability makes us even stronger. So don't be afraid to talk about this. If you're feeling deeply hurt or fearful or anxious, it's really important to address it, because if we don't, it then will make us sick and actually could cause so much harm. Not only now, but later. This post-traumatic stress is a real thing. And a lot of the healthcare workers that I've worked with were really feeling horrible. And we had group sessions and we had professionals to really intervene. And it was so important for the people that I was observing and watching to make sure that they got through this, that they got the help they needed. And so many people actually thanked me to allow the opportunity to talk about this, because now they're able to deal and cope. So we are very resilient. We can get through it, but we need to do it together and we need to talk about it. Keeping it inside and making believe that we're just, impervious to any type of harm that could come mentally. We're all vulnerable, particularly to what we don't recognize so easily. It's easy when you step on something like a nail and you know that your foot is hurt. It's hard to recognize the mental trauma that we feel. And we've all suffered it in one way or another.
That's such a good point, that if you're that not to just sit and forget about it, to deal with it and talk about it. And I think that's
Exactly.
such a really good point. Well, we could talk for hours, but thank you for sharing with my community. I so appreciate this. And for any of you who haven't listened to, Mark gave an amazing, amazing podcast interview on hope, which is really powerful. So I'll make sure I put that in the show notes so you can easily find that.
These podcasts are terrific. I love them. And I think now more than ever, they're just so important, because it allows us the ability to really look deep inside ourselves and figure out that there's so much good. There's so much good in people, and goodness will prevail. And I think we're seeing that. And ultimately, when we get through this pandemic, we're going to look back and say, what did we do right? How could we have done better? And going forward, the concept of resiliency and hope, to me, is hope for a better future. That, look, we could always do better, but we can't beat ourselves up for what we didn't know or what we didn't do. What we can do is learn from it and do better next time. And so with that, Margie, I just want to say thank you so much. As I said, I not only appreciate you for who you are and the fact that you're trying to make a difference in other people's lives, but all that we have in people who care about us. It just feels so good. And for those who are listening, think about the people who really care about you and, who you care about, and let them know. We don't tell people how much they mean to us. And it's just nice for people to know.
Right. So that's a great takeaway. After you listen to this podcast, at least one person, make sure, think of that and tell them how much you appreciate and care. And that's one of the big things, Mark, that increases happiness. I mean, it's amazing when you appreciate someone else and tell them that, give them that gratitude. It's amazing how they've done studies on this. Your happiness soars. Fine. It's really
people
quite
always say, I don't know what gift to give. The greatest gift that I could give to someone else is giving them something, the feeling of being able to give something to somebody else. Giving is actually such a great way of receiving gratitude for being able to give somebody else something that they might want or need, even if it's just a kind word.
Oh, I love that. Well, thank you so much for being here and sharing your wisdom. And I know we'll keep in touch.
We will. Of course we will. Okay.
Thanks so much.
Right. And safe.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. My second guest talking about resilience is also a family member, and it's my husband, Craig. So welcome, Craig.
Thanks, Margie. Looking forward to talking.
Yeah, the reason I wanted to have you on the podcast was because this whole year, you're an OBGYN and you deal with pregnant women. And I really wanted to know what you thought was some of the qualities or things that helped people have resilience to get through this, because this is a group who was very fearful and they were very scared. And I just wanted you to share what you found in your practice working with all of these women, what seemed to really be helpful that people can take with them and learn from this.
Well, I do want to say that we're not done with this resilience yet. Unfortunately, we have a lot more time ahead of us to continue the process. And I think it's great that you're going to bring awareness to this topic. For us, I don't think I appreciated some of the troubles and fears that were generated by the pandemic. And it came to my attention when our midwife was talking to me about some of the patients she talked to in the office. And the big thing she told me about was fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of being alone, especially at a time when you're expecting to be around your family. Pregnancy is not just a thing between a husband or wife or a couple. It's also a family celebration. And taking that away from people, especially people who were relying or expecting to have family members there at their side after the birth of their baby or even during the process, engendered an awful lot of fear. And I guess one of the things that pandemic does is it forces you to modify and change things. And what we decided to try was a support group. And we weren't really sure this was going to work because our population really is diverse. And I wasn't really sure how people could come together who maybe not have ever been together in the past. But remarkably, it was very gratifying. Our patients came together. They formed their own community. And I really think that was instrumental in allowing these patients to go through the process of their pregnancies, knowing that they had their backs for each other. And that's something they didn't expect. And it's something that surprised me a little bit. And so I guess that alone kind of alerted me to the fact that we need to have a community. And it could be any community of people. It doesn't have to specifically be pregnancy. It could be a community of friends. It could be people with special interests together. But I think that is such an important part of getting through this process. And I guess that was the first thing I kind of uncovered in this kind of strange journey we've been going through.
I wanted to just comment on that because I couldn't agree with you more. And it's funny because the very first podcast of 2020 was on community before COVID, just the importance of community and what they found health-wise and how community is essential. And even with happiness, one of the most important things, they did a study with over 80 years, of these men at Harvard, and they found one of the key components was community. And so that's what I found, that I've had my happiness community, and it's just been incredible, the support and just knowing that you have a community around you, but also different communities. I think that's what's kept people going. And I think the Zoom, I'm so grateful to Zoom and the online community, because even though we can't physically be with people, people were able to generate a community and share. And it's helped me. I reconnected with so many people during this pandemic, but different communities. So I think that's really, thank you for sharing that.
The other thing that came to mind was about the resilience of even the healthcare community and just communities at large. And I think that's purpose. Sometimes we have to look at things that are just bigger than just ourselves, our micro environments, the local people, our family, or just people right in front of us. There's a whole lot of other people out there who are also struggling. And when we come together as a group, we're much more powerful. Just a few examples, I can tell you that in our community, Facebook groups were springing up in different towns, and they were collecting money. And the money went to two interesting things. One, it went to feed the healthcare professionals who are stuck working 12 and 24-hour shifts. And they spent the money buying food at local restaurants, and then they'd be delivering the food to the hospitals and letting the hospitals figure out where the food would go. And I can tell you, the fact that the nurses and the doctors were sitting there working very hard, and just knowing there were people behind them who were there to help support them, was really amazingly gratifying to us. And they also took some of that money and they used it to buy equipment. They bought the first units so they can detect COVID in the hospitals. So now we have machines that can pick up COVID in 15 to 30 minutes. So those sense of purpose, I think, are huge in this process. Although maybe we stand apart because of this pandemic, when you see people rallying together, I think we really stand shoulder to shoulder in a metaphoric way. And by knowing that there's other people there with you, it makes this whole process, we're much stronger. We're able to absorb the punishing blows. And even though we're still not done, I know there's other parts of the country that are suffering in ways that are just horrible, just like we did back in the springtime. We're not done with it yet. We're all working really hard to keep this from resurging in this area. I think the idea of purpose is not just on knowing that somebody's there, but the energy that comes from it. And when we all do our parts, we're all stronger together. Sorry, Margie. And it kind of reminds me of when I was the IT guy for some of Margie's earlier classes.
But wait, let's just be honest. You were the IT person when I first did my happiness class. But then the second class, I didn't need you, and you still came. So you chose to come.
I came and I listened, and I think my patients have benefited immensely from Margie's stuff. I always teach them things all the time that I learned out of the 21 steps to get to be a happier person. But, one thing which was really interesting about that class, and I didn't forget, was about energy. And I think the energy of the group and of purpose is huge. When we're together, the energy can be really positive and we can move forward. And when we have negative energy and lots of fear and divisiveness, I think we're weaker. And I love you to share with them just a little bit of what I'm talking about, Marge.
Okay, well, there's a couple things. Let's go first on the purpose part, because I couldn't agree with you more. And that's what I saw. Maybe one of the beautiful things, whenever we have challenges, again, we grow stronger and lessons are learned. And so what I did see was people were reinventing themselves. I couldn't get over, because I had lots of classes during the pandemic. I did lots of, because I felt that was something I could do also. So I had all sorts of workshops and I just felt that was helping the community. But what I did see was that people were finding their purpose. Where could they add their piece? One of my good friends who has a embroidery business was making masks and donating them and then putting fun sayings on them. And people were giving food to other people, and whatever their purpose was, when you get involved, and I think this is one of the antidotes when we're feeling sorry for ourselves, because yes, this was it still is. It's not that it's over, but we do see that there's an end in sight, fortunately. But when we're in the midst of things, it's so easy to just wake up and another day inside and feel sorry for yourself and just become in that energy, that energy of victimhood, versus the energy of purpose, or the energy of, well, what can I do? What's something I can do that could benefit the world? And when you get involved with something larger than yourself, just like you said, when everybody came together, there's nothing better. You feel so good. And it's just a sense of accomplishment. And it really immediately takes you out of that horrible feeling, oh, poor me. So I couldn't agree with you more. And think about the world at large, how everybody benefits from these things as well. And then the second point was about energy. Yes, energy is contagious. Think about when you're with certain people, how your energy can either expand and feel good, or you can catch their energy, which sometimes makes you feel terrible. I think everyone can know what I'm talking about. So when you come to a group and you all bring and you collectively have that energy, it just raises everyone up. And that's what I found for me, the different groups that I've been in my class has kept me elevated, kept my mood high, because surrounding by people who are all trying to, really improve themselves and help the world at large has been just incredibly, incredibly positive. So yes, I'm big into the energy, and, and that's something for everyone listening. When you are more isolated, you sort of realize you have time to think, who who do I surround myself with? And are they elevating you? Or are they making you feel contracted that you don't want to be on them? You want to catch the emotions of the people. So it's just something to sort of going into 2020, think who you want to be around. And, if there are people that you really don't want to be around, or you feel they're creating negativity within you, then you have to put your boundaries. And there's, anyway. So, yes.
So, Margie, I think we should all know that 2021 is a year that we all are going to continue to need to be resilient and be patient. I think it's important to continue to reach out to those you love and those you care about, and even to those you don't know, but you see suffering. And I think when we do these kind of things, it allows us to continue with that sense of purpose and to elevate the energy of everyone around us, and only hope for the year ahead to be a good one and a better year for everybody.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. And, everybody listening, take this with you into 2021.
I'm laughing. So it's always nice to hear your wife say you have some wisdom to share with others.
No, you do, Craig. I always learn so many things from you, and you don't realize, I think a lot of us don't realize our own worth, and that's something else. So just think about all the good things that you do and that you share with everybody around you in the world. And I think we'd all be surprised at how amazing each one of us is. But I think moving ahead, you're right. Make sure to be involved with purpose, and make sure that you are in community. If not, find a community and find one that really nourishes you and that you enjoy being part of, because I think moving forward, that will just help you get the tools as well. So thank you so much.
My pleasure.
And we're wishing everybody a happy new year and wonderful things for 2021 moving forward. Wow, we've certainly gotten some tools that we can use moving into 2021. I just wanted to review some of the main points. So number one, Mark said, instead of making that little mind shift, instead of I have to, I get to. And that can really make all the difference in the world. Number two, kindness. And kindness is such a big part of what I teach in all my programs, because when we spread kindness, amazing things happen. One of my favorite things is just spreading loving kindness to others. You just send out good thoughts to other people and see what happens. It's such a win-win. Appreciation. Mark talked about how amazing it was to be appreciated for the work he did in the hospital, and just sort of remember how good it feels when someone appreciates you. So it's good to appreciate others and also appreciate yourself. Appreciation is very, very powerful. And then get help. Don't keep it all in yourself. And then we had Craig come on and talked about community. And I have found this is essential, having communities during this time, and really all times. Community is such an important part of life. And if we find ourselves isolated, then search and find communities, because it's really going to enhance your life, and it makes going through everything so much easier. Purpose. Craig talked about purpose, finding a purpose and something greater than yourself. That's the antidote to so much of the suffering that we're going through. I found that when people would come to me, or they would just say, I'm just so down in the dumps and really feeling so sorry for themselves, the first thing I would say is get involved with something greater than you are, some cause, anything, helping one other person even. And it's amazing how that can immediately shift your mindset, your mood, everything. And then energy. You want to be around positive energy. You want to make sure what energy are you bringing into your life. So those were just some of the takeaways from today. And some other ones I want to add are, I think, living in the moment. Because what I've seen through this pandemic is that the only place that we can do anything or make change is in the moment. If we're living in the past and really rehashing what happened, oh, that was so terrible how they handled that, that's not going to get us anywhere. And if we're fearful of the future, that's not getting us anywhere either. That's just increasing our stress, increasing the stress hormone cortisol, which has negative effects on our bones, every aspect of our health. So instead, living in the now, what can I do at this moment? And I think when you shift your focus to the now, and this is what I've seen with all the people I work with, it makes a huge difference. So I wanted to add that piece. I wanted to add about purpose and passion and community. And I hope these tools are helpful. And I also wanted to tell you that I'm starting another happiness class January 5th, but this time it's more. I realized that the happiness class was so much more than just teaching people happiness. It really gave them tools and a community. And it gave people the resilience. I couldn't get over how powerful these tools were. Sometimes you don't realize until you're put to the test. And this pandemic and our isolation certainly did that. But I've added more this year. I've added health and wellness. So I've made it an entire blueprint and really a 2021 reset. So there'll be classes besides the happiness is 8 weeks is the beginning. And then besides the happiness, every month there's going to be 2 additional classes, one that I'm teaching and one I have an expert teaching, similar to the experts on the podcast. But this time when you come to the class, you'll be able to interact with them. You'll be able to ask questions. So I'm really, really excited. If this is interesting to you at all, I'll have all the information in the show notes. And I really, really hope you join me because this community has, as I said before, has really uplifted me. And I think we've all been there for one another. And it's been so much fun. So I would love to expand it to anyone who wants to be part of it. So I'm wishing you amazing things for 2021. And thank you. I can't thank you enough for listening to my podcast, being part of this. And also, if you have any topics on bones, on anything that you are interested in that you'd like me to cover in 2021, please just send me an email. You can email me at margie@margiebissinger.com, or you can respond to the podcast. I get that as well. And because I would love to make sure I have access to so many amazing guests in different professions. And, if there are topics that you would like, please just let me know. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for being with me this year and wishing everyone just a wonderful, wonderful, happy new year. And I really do know that 2021 is going to be a miraculous year. So bye for now. And I look forward to seeing you next year on the next episode.